This time on Captain Castle's Laboratory, we're working on a Department 56 carnival ride. It is the Village Accessories, the Flying High Space Planes. It's an old piece. This is how I got it. We have a broken off propeller with a broken airplane. These two are still intact, but it's going to have to be repaired so it's balanced. And then here's the rocket, which lights up. Pretty cool, huh? See the stars, land on the moon, circle the earth, and fly in the clouds. It's kind of a cool little rocket ship, but the problem is this is supposed to spin, and it doesn't. I don't know if you can hear it. Sounds like the motor's turning, but nothing else. So, motor may be turning, motor may not be turning. It's hard to tell on these. This is very similar to the swinging ghoulies. It's probably the same mechanism on the inside, and it's probably just as difficult to take apart. So, let's see what we can do. Now, if this is like the swinging ghoulies, which I'm assuming it is, it separates right in here. See the seam? You can see it better over here. It's bigger. And the rest of it's just solid. There's no seams. Looks like a seam there, but there's no seam. Just right there. So, the swinging ghoulies is a pain, because usually you end up breaking the top. So, first we're going to do is disconnect the power. And if you have this piece and you forgot what the voltage is, or you don't have this piece and you want to know what the voltage is, it is 12 volts AC. At 300 milliamps. So I'm going to take the power supply and move it out of the way, since we're not going to need it at the moment. Add a little extra light. Then. So, this is a resin piece, just like the swinging ghoulies is. And like I said, I think the internals are probably the same. So, normally I would just take a spudger and try and separate it. But I know Department 56 is really good at using really hard glues, and that would just be futile. So, we're going to apply heat. We're going to get this thing nice and toasty. Got to be careful, because these LEDs, you don't want to get these top yellow LEDs super hot. So, and you don't want to distort the windows. I am going to rotate this with an upward angle. So I try and keep the majority of the heat on just the red edge. I have the, probably should turn that so it can suck more air. I have the machine set for 160 degrees Celsius. The swinging ghoulies is usually around 2 something, but I want to see if maybe this will come apart easier. It's barely even warm. And if you can, if you have to pull this one apart, I'd probably recommend pulling it from the side with the cord. The reason I say that is most likely in your display, that side's going to be facing away from the front. So if you scratch it or chip the ring, hopefully it's on the non-visible side. Now this piece is meant to be displayed all the way around, so like the center of your carnival, maybe in the middle of the table. You're probably going to end up chipping it and or scratching it, so just be prepared to get out your red and blue and silver paints to touch it up as best as you can. or markers, whatever you may use yourself to touch up stuff. Yep, that's toasty. Alrighty. Now, let's hey, it's starting to lift. I can get the spudger under it. I'm using the rounded paddle sponger that's tapered at the end. The pointy one wasn't really digging into it, which is weird because it's pointy. I am not prying. I am just pushing in and letting the wedge do all the work, because I'm trying my hardest not to damage this. It's kind of a cool looking piece though. I like the colors and the lights. Doesn't fit my motif, but it is kind of a neat looking piece. So I'm going to wedge this back under, and I'm going to reheat because it's getting hard again, so that means the glue is cooling down. Also with it up, I can get some of the heat into the separation and get it more directed towards the glue itself. This thing is hot. Apparently its re-entry was recent. Rocket ship humor. Probably wasn't very punny. Alright, it is lifting, but it's not coming completely off yet. So I am going to use the dual spudger technique, and I'm going to leave one underneath it to keep pressure. And I'm going to work my way back around it. This time I am going to apply a little twisting force. Not a lot, just a little, because it's the glue. The glue is stretching. You can see the gap has gotten larger. I'll leave that one there, and I'm going to go back to this one because it's got more surface area on the paddle. And I can see right in here there's a lot of glue. See if I can cut through it with the tip. There we go. I can feel it separating in my fingers. Not quite. Go to a triple spudger. I'm using the point on this one to get the glue that is on this side that's really thick. Kind of using it like a scraper and walking it around. I'm thinking that's where the majority is. It's stuck. So I'm using the point on this one to scrape the glue. So what I think is happening to this thing is the glue is getting in the way and it's re-adhering. Especially right there. Quadruple spudger technique. we're going to continue heating this thing. And this is why these things take so long to work on, is because they're not really designed to ever come apart. This is usually why I pause the videos, is because this takes forever, as you can tell. That way you're not sitting around waiting for this thing to come apart or getting bored stiff because it takes forever. I mean, you always have the option to fast forward or skip or play it in a faster speed. But that's why a lot of the videos I pause the video or stop the camera. So it's not 3 hours of me just trying to pry the top off of something, or the bottom, because most of the Limax line is the bottom. The Department 56, and, well, is both bottom and or top. And then Mr. Christmas is usually the top. But Mr. Christmas usually is all screwed together, while Limax and Department 56 are usually glued together. Let's see. Just make sure there's nothing that doesn't reach. Making sure there's nothing down in here holding it in. I can't tell. I don't think there is. I don't feel any resistance on anything. Except my screwdriver gets stuck. Making sure this doesn't unscrew. The outer one, the inner one rotates. Yeah, it's just pressed into a gear. So before I break it, let's double check. Because as I'm lifting this, I'm watching this bend. So that's why I was trying to see if there was something in here that maybe was screwed. It's too big. There's my smallest one. There we go. Yeah, sounds pretty solid. Don't really feel anything. Nope, no resistance in either direction. This isn't caught. Make sure I'm not pulling on the wires. Trying to push the wires in. There we go. Wondering if that's my problem, because like I said, everything's flexing. I'm wondering if this is actually glued into something on the inside. It looks like two pieces, like this outer one would separate from the inner one, unless they're glued together. Like it's a two-piece collar. Actually might be what's holding me up. Because it is glued. Come on. Oh, the outer collar broke. I'll probably replace that. And part of the inner collar broke. But now there's a gap, and I'm wondering if it'll pop off now. Definitely getting a lot more lift. So yes, you do have to separate that top collar. We'll have to fabric cobble something to replace it. Still got lots and lots of glue, but it's coming out finally. And it's only taken like 20 minutes or more, right? Jeez. So, 20 some odd minutes in, finally. So, this inner bushing was glued to this, which stops this from sliding up, because as you can see, the inner one fits through the hole. The outer one didn't. Technically, the outer one isn't needed, it just covers the gap. I'm sure we can find something to replace it. Now, I'm doubting this has ever been taken apart, so apparently it has 3 screws and 4. And, well, the problem is, I don't think that's supposed to be just, you know, laying there. I'm sure that was attached to something at some point, and that's the drive gear that is supposed to be pressed into. And I think I know why this came apart. This shaft is not supposed to come out. You're supposed to unscrew that from this shaft. This shaft is probably permanently pressed into this, and I wonder if this is cracked. Does not appear to be. Let's see if that motor turns. So, getting the power cord back out and plugging it back in, because of course I said we probably wouldn't need it, and I was wrong. Hey look, it spins. Jeez. Alright. So, if you have this piece, try to unthread the propeller without unthreading the whole thing. Or don't pull up on it and yank it out, because then your gear falls out and then you got to deal with this, and you're probably going to break that collar, which I did. Where are my small needle nose so I can hold that gear in place? Those are too big. These are way too big. There they are. So, long, thin. I think these are floral needle nose or jewelry needle nose or bead making needle. I don't know. I've seen them in like 3 different things that have different names. In the Michaels, they have them in the bead section. I guess I should bend this back before I try and shove it in. Probably going to have to cut the top of this off because it's pinching it too much. I know. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, it's ruined. That was pretty cool. It's not ruined. It should actually work just fine. We're going to test it. Nice and seated. It's spinning. Might be hard to tell. because that's not balanced, so that's not going to swing worth a damn. Oh, okay. Now, if you get this apart, you have it and you disassemble it, I would highly recommend that when you reassemble it, to use hot glue and not a resin glue, so you can take it apart again in the future, because everything breaks. Underneath is a synchronous motor. I'm assuming it's 12 volts. That is direct drive off the power. The gear is a 14-tooth gear. It's almost identical to what Mr. Christmas uses, but it also comes in those gear packs that I suggest. So if your gear is broken, it is replaceable. I'm trying to untangle this so it's somewhat balanced. So I can try and there we go. So there is the issue. Don't pull the center shaft out. This should unscrew left hand, lefty loose, right? Nope, left hand is tightening, so these are right hand threads. So right loosens it, left tightens it because of the rotation of the motor. There we go. So it's kind of weird that the airplanes are resin. This center housing is resin. These are probably resin, but they feel like cheap plastic. But it's going to have to be glued with a really strong glue. The owner tried to fix this apparently with hot glue, based on what I see here. And hot glue is not going to handle the stresses. It's going to have to be a super hard glue, like a super glue, or a resin type glue that cures in 24 hours. That's probably what I'll end up doing, is I'll probably set this up so it hardens overnight and then finish it tomorrow as far as the reassembly goes with the 3 planes. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm using the wire cutters, the flush cutters, to cut and break out the glue. Resin glues and super glues will not stick to hot glue. So if something was hot glued previously and you want to make it a stronger bond, you need to clean off the old glue. So I need to get all the hot glue out of the mating area. I'm also wearing X-ray specs, as I call them, but they're just magnifiers, to get a better look inside, because of course, you know, this is white and red and silver, and the glue is mostly clear, so it's hard to see, but you need it as clean as possible. It's also a jagged break, so the hot glue is in all the nooks and crannies. You can do this with an X-Acto knife, your fingernail, whatever you feel comfortable with. I like using the side cutters because I can pinch it just enough to get it to rip out the glue without actually cutting the glue. So I'm kind of using these like a pair of tweezers or needle nose pliers. So there's glue on this side too, so I got to clean both. That's how it's supposed to be. Still feels a little spongy, like I'm missing some glue. If you've ever had to glue anything with hot glue and you break it apart and you push it together, it's kind of got the spongy feeling. That's the feeling I have, and that's because there's a little bit of it in here that I can't get with the cutters. So we're going to try the tweezers that came with this kit. Let's see if I can get it out. There it is. So, now how does it feel? Oh yeah, a lot less spongy. So I'm going to hard glue this, and then I am going to let it sit. As far as this goes, we now got the gear in. We're definitely going to have to clean off some of this glue here so that this can fit back on. So now technically you can see I cut the bushing pretty much flush with the top. It's not down all the way. I'm holding it. You can see the gap. I don't want it to fall. So you technically don't need the bushing. This protrude all the way up. You can see the white where the bushing has been rubbing onto the shaft. That's just plastic. You can actually scrape it back down to silver. So you have a couple of choices if you had to break or cut it because of the way they glued it together. You could just leave it and you'll have a little bit of the silver shaft exposed underneath the propeller. Or you can, if you have spare stuff lying around, which I might even have something over here in my gear kit. If you watch my older videos, I had that little round thing I kept dumping out. Yeah, well, I accidentally dropped it into a trash can. So it went out with the garbage, so I got a new gear kit. But when you buy these bushing kits, they come with these bushings. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? So you could replace this with something like this. Now this is tapered, and I'll hold it with a pair of needle nose here. The top hole is smaller than the bottom hole. All you gotta do, so it goes all the way over and not sits up like that, is drill out the hole, and then it slides perfectly down, and then you have a replacement spacer bushing. Now, you could glue it on, which means if you ever have to open this up, you're not going to be able to, or you could just slide it over and let the threaded part of the propeller hold it in place. That means when you store this in the box, if you're a person that stores your stuff, you would have to make sure that you don't lose this. So, and then you can see different sole sizes come in different colors: green, pink, yellow, white. So there are choices. You could replace it with a brass bushing or a aluminum bushing or a steel bushing and just cut it down the size. This was white nylon, as you can see, just like the one I pulled out that's a tapered bushing. So you got choices. The point is to make it work and make it as close to factory as possible. Honestly, unless you're dealing with a Department 56 aficionado, they're never going to notice that you have trimmed the shaft if that's what happens if you try to pop this centerpiece out if it breaks. So, again, personal preferences. It's all up to you. I'll probably cut that bushing and stick it on here, just so it looks as close to OEM as possible. And what I'll end up doing is I will take that bushing and I will put a dot, a literal little dab of hot glue on the edge of it and just stick it on. I'm not going to do the whole thing, just enough to hold it in place. Because this, I don't know if it's a 24/7 display where it's up all year round, but I know it's up a lot of the year, and it may not be. The person that owns this has a big display. Like, of Christmas and carnival stuff like I have of Halloween. And I know that she keeps a lot of it up. I don't know if she keeps this up specifically. But regardless, I want to make sure that it's repairable in the future if and when it needs to be repaired. Because, as I say all the time, everything will break eventually. Now on this, it's just the gear came out due to the fact that the shaft was pulled out. But that synchronous motor is the original, and synchronous motors do wear out. They do break, and eventually it'll have to be opened back up. And I want to make sure that this can be opened. So either the synchronous motor will break, that 14 tooth will break, this one will break, which is kind of nice that they have a little nut on it, so you can unscrew the nut and replace the gear. It's not pressed on, which is actually kind of interesting. A replacement one may be pressed on because the synchronous motors, they're getting rid of a lot of old styles. So whatever this glue is, and it may have been opened once before in its history, I have no idea. I have hard glue, which is this yellower stuff. Then this white glue is like silicone glue. It's really stretchy. It's like snot. But to make sure it glues flush, square, level, however you want to call it, all the way around, you want to make sure that you clean off all of the glue on the mating areas again. See, that's hard glue, and it's kind of a yellowish color. Now, it would be kind of cool if those light lit up, but at the same token, if they did, this thing would be impossible to take apart without damaging it. The little dots on the top to match the lights on the side. So doesn't have to be 100% clean, it just has to be the majority, so there's nothing really protruding out that's going to get in the way of your mating surfaces. And then you can always test fit it to make sure. Now, of course, I haven't cleaned the body yet, but it fits a lot closer just by cleaning the cap. So, but anyhow, so I'm probably going to go ahead and pause this thing here, so that way I can set the glue up on that. Now the glue I'm going to use is around here somewhere, right there. I use the clear Gorilla Glue. It has a 24-hour cure time, and it is, as I mentioned in many other videos, extremely strong. I love it. I've tried many different glues. I mention this a lot when I glue things. And I found a good quality hot glue that I'll use to put this back on. I use Surebonder for the hot glue. For super glues, I use the Gorilla. I was never a fan of Gorilla, and then I started using it again, and they apparently changed their formula, and it works really good now. I also like the fact that their yellow cap has an applicator brush, which comes in really handy when you're doing stuff like this, and you need to make sure you have a relatively even coat that isn't going to ooze out when you squish it together. And then I also use the blue cap, which is the same as the yellow, except it doesn't have the applicator brush. Yeah, look at that. Almost perfectly flush. It's caught right here because I got, glue. But the cap is clean and ready. So I will link below the kit of gears that has this 14-tooth gear in it, as well as it has some of those plastic bushings. And the Gorilla Glue you can get on Amazon, but I usually buy mine just from the local hardware store. I get mine from Ace. It may not be the cheapest, but they're close, and it's the, what is it, Ace is the place for the friendly hardware folk. I like my Ace hardware. I go to a different city's Ace hardware because the one in the city next to me is actually, technically it's closer. And they're a lot more helpful than the one that's actually in my city, the closer one to me. And Ace always has the weird obscure stuff that some of the big box stores don't carry. So I'm not endorsed by them. I'm not anything. It's just I use Ace hardware a lot. So just give you an example on my current job, or current job, it's been my job for almost 2 decades, looking for a specific plumbing piece that Lowe's and Home Depot can't get. But you know who does or can get it? Ace Hardware. And it's a plumbing piece that's been around for many, many years. It's not like it was just invented. So it's amazing that sometimes the small mom and pop places have stuff that the big stores don't have. And I think that's kind of neat. Especially with the title Random Junk. I use random things for random things. I don't use them for what they're designed. And Ace Hardware has a lot more random stuff than the big box stores. And you can buy it in singles. If I need a specific screw and I only need 2 of them, I can buy 2. Whereas Home Depot might sell the same box, but I got to buy a box of 100. Or most screws, if you ever bought screws, aren't in quantity, they're by weight. Usually like 1 pound, 2 pounds, 7 pounds. So even though Amazon would technically be cheaper, I support local Ace Hardware when it comes to like the glues and silicones and the spray lubes I use, stuff like that. Also, up until the pandemic, they gave away free popcorn with your visit. Unfortunately, since the pandemic, they don't. But, you know, it's understandable because a lot of people are, don't want somebody else touching their foods, unless there's, like fast food joint, where they're supposed to be, cleanly and stuff, and they get inspected by the health inspectors. But, look at that. All the way down, all the way around. Assuming that the dotted lines matched up with the... I got a picture. Yes. The dotted lines match up with the lights. Right there. Nice seam. It's pretty well equal all the way around. It's not 100% equal because it's always had where the hole's not quite centered, so no matter which way I rotate it, this always has a lip that hangs over. But I can do that. See, this is the front. So that doesn't matter. Space Planes isn't centered on the dotted line. Let's see, we can do that. And then just run a bead of hot glue. Keep pointing over here because here's my hot glue. And this will be good to go. And now that it sits flush, you can see how much of that bushing actually sticks up. So, but there we go. So, tools, definitely going to need a heat gun. And spudgers, and not these flimsier ones that I like to use, but the more rigid ones. You can probably get away with using a smaller flathead or blade screwdriver. And patience. You saw the amount of patience. And then make sure you pop off that plastic retainer, bushing, whatever they want to call it during assembly. But whatever you use, just take your time so you don't break the resin cap. So I'm going to set this over here. We're going to set this up to get glued. I'm going to glue the wing on first, or excuse me, the propeller blade. And I'll give it about 12 hours, and then after the 12 hours, I'll probably glue this wing back on. And this wasn't from shipping. This is a local pickup. This is just the way I got it. If it was from shipping, I'd say, whatever carrier, it probably broke in shipping from that carrier. So Could have been just the way it was stored, or maybe the way it was, maybe it got dropped. Because these are on the outside of the foam inside the box. Well, this is on the inside of the foam. So this is protected really well inside the box. These aren't. These are literally stuck up against the cardboard box. So you could put this away and accidentally bump it and literally break this. So cardboard box design's kind of horrible. But, oh, this is full of hot glue as well. So this is all going to have to be cleaned off and peeled off. There's no hot glue on the wing part, but there is hot glue on the body of the plane. So, but, so yeah. We're going to stop here. I'm going to start the gluing process, and then in your time it's going to be a couple of seconds. In my time it's going to be at least 24 hours. But we're going to get this one fixed up, and when I come back, hopefully we'll be spinning this thing, looking at its beautiful lighting and coloring in low light. Because like I said, I'm not a fan of carnival rides, but I really do like this throwback to the 50s, or even the old like Duck Dodgers cartoons with that style of the bulbous rocket ships. I always like this design, and this has got really good coloring. I really do like the blue and the red and the silver. They did a good job. Too bad it's not still available. But anyway, outside of my opinion, we'll be back in just a moment. Alright, we're back. As you can see, it's glued together and working. Now, of course, you can see the seam where it was broken right there as it spins. But other than that, the plane's back together, the props back on. It's all good to go. Now, I don't know how, but somehow the red plane's sticking out at an angle. No matter how I twist the chain, it always sticks out at an angle, where you can see the yellow and blue plane are a little bit more straight. Well, actually, the blue plane is the straightest. But be careful with your chains. They'll easily get caught up in the character's hands, and you can break them off. Also, they get knotted really horribly. That's pretty typical. But that's it. If you think you're going to pull the shaft back out and possibly have to tear it all apart again, you can put a dab of super glue on the splines of the metal, the shaft, push it into the gear. That'll prevent you from just yanking it out, because you just glue the gear on. So that's something you can do. But the flip side of that is, if that gear breaks, it's going to make it really hard for you to get the gear off. So it's one of those, half dozen, six the other. Although if it is broken, you can just break the gear off and then clean the shaft and then press it into a new gear. So you do have that if that gear breaks. But let's see what this thing looks like in low light. Kind of swamps out the camera a little bit. I would tip it, except if I tip it, I'm going to smack the impeller or catch one of the characters on my hand, and then it's going to break the impeller again. Propeller. That still looks pretty cool. The domes on the side, that you can see the two here, are actually going yellow, blue, red. So the bright flash that looks almost white is blue. But they're not bright in person. The up and down ones are much brighter, but the way the camera is picking it up with the balance going out, you can see it almost looks white on camera. But that's it. That is the kind of a pain to remove the cap or dome of the village accessory, the flying high space planes. It kind of been cooler, I think, if those would have been rocket ships, because it is a rocket ship. Planes, especially, planes don't like those, don't go into space. But hey, I digress. Cool little carnival piece. Like I said, I like the colors. The packaging kind of sucks. You are going to probably break your prop on this thing. because the packaging, they have the prop against the cardboard box between the foam and the cardboard. Kind of a crappy way of doing it, whereas the rocket itself is in the center. But it is what it is. It is kind of repairable. You will always see a crack if it is broke like that. It is, if you're really good with painting, you could probably take some silver paint and touch it up and make it look better. It did shift a little. When I glued it together, I taped it, and apparently it shifted the tape, which is why it's not perfect. Light's coming back, and there you go. You can kind of see that this side right here, let's make this easy, sticks out a hair. And that's because I couldn't see under the tape that the propeller kicked a little, the blade. But it's better than it was when it was in 2 pieces. So hopefully this helps. You can see the hassle to take these things apart. The swinging goalies I mentioned, I have a couple of them I've been working on. The reason they're not up is because I've literally snapped them. The glue they use on that is just as hard, and when you're prying, it usually breaks the tops. They are probably one of the hardest ones to actually try and repair. I have repaired one as far as the motor goes, but the cap is broke and the lights don't work, which I made a new circuit for the lights, so technically the lights do work. It's just the cap is broke. And the cap on a swinging goalies is similar to this cap here, except it's flat and it's black and orange, and it's got little lights go around the outside versus up and down the body. So, and of course it's a tree versus a rocket, but they're very similar. The internals are almost identical. Almost, not quite, but very close. Makes sense. It's a very similar mechanism. We're swinging 3 arms on the swinging goalies. There's 3 tree branches that move 3 different characters on swings, and this is 3 propeller blades moving 3 planes on swings, the chain. So, but anyhow, that's this. Remember, lefty tighty, righty, or lefty loosey, righty. God damn it. It's backwards thread. Right, instead of being tight, is loose, and left, instead of being loose, is tight. So it's reverse threads. And whatever you do, try your hardest not to pull it out, because then you're going to have to pop it off to get that gear to line back up. So, and you risk cracking the gear when you push it back together again. But other than that, there you go. That is the Department 56 Flying High Space Planes, and that's how it works, how you work on it. It's a cool piece if you have it. Hope you enjoy it. Like I said, I like the colors. Not a big fan of the prop. If it was mine, I probably would have cut the chains off and left it as a propeller on the front of a rocket and just had it sitting, maybe even hung it from the ceiling, or even taken this off completely and hang it from the ceiling, because it looks great without this on top. And again, my opinion, may not be yours. So, but thanks for watching. Till the next repair, have a good one.